I thought that was classic.
7 o'clock, and I'm calling the meeting to order. This is the May 19th, 2014 City Council meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Some introductions. I'm Ann Hunt, the mayor. To my right is our Assistant City Administrator, Mike Peroni, our Finance Director, Brian Grimm, our Ron Beatty, our City Attorney, David Abel, our Community Development Director, and Paul Fells is getting the sign-in sheet. To my left is Councilmember Mark Vanderlinde, Councilmember Arlene Donahue, Councilmember Bob Christians, and our City Engineer Paul Hornby from WSB. Okay, our next item is to approve the agenda, and I have a couple of additions and changes. I would like to add a statement at the beginning of this meeting, if it's all right with the rest of you.
Sure.
Okay. And then I would like to move on number F to add appoint new council member. We'll have our council member discussion. Number G, I want to pull from the consent agenda the support scenic byway and add that in as business item G. And on H, I want to amend the regular meeting minutes from April 21st, 2014. Does anybody else have any changes? Okay, can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Okay, at this time, I would like to present a statement of, to clarify some rumors that have been spread about different things going on in our city. And do you want to start that for me?
Yep.
F5? Okay, great. Okay, first I want to talk about the water treatment. Here's some history of the water treatment plant. First of all, we started in December and approved an agreement with WSB to provide a preliminary design and pilot study. In February of 2014, we asked for some more information and asked Bolton & Menck to propose a value engineering study for $10,000 to be conducted during the last week in February. Many people have had questions about this study. They will be addressed by our attorney later in the evening. That $10,000 study, I did not unilaterally decide upon. It was voted on 5-0. Yes, you heard that right. Our former mayor voted for it. So I hope that I can put that issue to rest. Next, we issued an RFP, and Mr. Funk stated that best practices suggested that we have a competitive bidding process. We had several proposals, and Bolton & Menck was chosen for the study. Bolton & Menck presented the results from the study last meeting, and tonight they presented at our work session the water rates that they worked on with Brian Grimm. That is currently where we are with the water treatment for any of those of you who have questions and want to know the facts. Here's some other facts. The $4.6 million proposal from WSB was a phase 1 estimate. WSB's proposed entire project cost through 2030 was approximately 18 to 19 million. Fact. An additional treatment plant would have been necessary within 2 years. A rate study was conducted assuming cost of 12 million. The Bolton & Menck proposal through 2030 would cost 21.8 million. Again, these are projections. The RO option would be 29.6 million. None of these numbers have ever been written in concrete. They have always been estimated projections based on the best information available at the time. Why were WSB's costs lower? They didn't include chemical feed equipment. They didn't include the costs for new well number 6. They didn't include costs for raw water main between well number 5 and the South Central Water Treatment Plant, and they didn't include land acquisition costs. Okay, water treatment conclusions. There never was a total solution for 4.6 million and never will be. No private sector company would undertake a project of this size without input from multiple providers and their own users. Council gathered information and investigated other options as part of their due diligence. Water users now know the total costs. They need this information before agreeing to any phased-in approach. Oh, let's go back. Water treatment next steps. We did a revised rate study to determine costs to water users. Brian Grimm presented that earlier this evening. We're also going to determine if there are additional users in surrounding communities that may be interested in collaborating on a regional plant. Senator Dave Osmek broached that topic with us at Minnetrista Days this past weekend and heavily suggested that we consider that. We're also investigating short-term solutions to treat specific areas within our city that have problem water. We will provide informational meetings for residents interested in learning more about water treatment options, and we're going to poll our water users. They will have input in the process. I hope that answers some of the misconceptions regarding the water treatment at this point in the process. Okay, now I would like to address citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard is an opportunity for residents to express their concerns or to make suggestions for improving their city. It is not an opportunity to attack other residents, make unfounded allegations, or begin to campaign for the next election. I promise to treat Minnetrista residents with respect, so I will not comment on the personal assaults on me or the council. Tonight, we will enforce the 3-minute limit on those individuals who don't respect the council's or the residents' time. Limit will be 30 minutes prior to the, no, I'm sorry, take that out of there. Is that still there? Okay, no, it's gone, okay. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is some final thoughts. Whoops. My concern for past hiring practices issues led me to not vet a citizen complaint properly. I apologize that Mr. Gale's name became attached to this, and I would like to thank him again for his service. We are having bi-monthly Q&A forums between our staff and council members. We started this after the last meeting, and it went extremely well, and we know that our staff have great ideas, and we want to listen to them and be able to implement them in a timely fashion. I want to especially thank Chief Falls and the Public Safety Department for an awesome Trista Days. We had an outstanding attendance, and I think everybody had a great time. So thank you, Paul, for that, and please pass our thanks along to your department. So at this point, we're going to start Citizens to be Heard, and I hope that all of you can act respectfully. You may not like us, but we are the representatives of the residents, and when you treat us disrespectfully, you treat the citizens of Minnetrista disrespectfully. So please keep that in mind when you approach the podium. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and the Council. My name is Julia Roldson, and I've just moved back home to the home I grew up in here in Minnetrista, 940 Bayside Lane. I moved home to help my parents, Russ and Cheryl Fisher. 8 years ago, my parents received a siding estimate from Mr. Christians. Since that time, we have received a number of harassing communications from Mr. Jerry Wiggin, which are documented in several emails that recently became public, as some of you were copied on them. Mr. Wiggin has also claimed that this is retaliation for my parents failing to award the siding job to you, Mr. Christians. But to your credit, you have apologized to my father for Mr. Wiggins' behavior and said he doesn't speak for you. That is also documented in an email, and I thank you for clarifying that. 2 weeks ago, several other emails from Mr. Wiggin were read out loud at this meeting. One in particular made reference to showing my mother how water runs and calling her an ambulance. My father was here, and he became incensed by this. Later that evening, he learned that Mr. Wiggin and his friend Tom Notch were driving back and forth in front of my parents' house. Unfortunately, my father then engaged in an email exchange where he talked about throwing a hammer at these vehicles if they didn't stop harassing my mother. So I stand before you tonight for two reasons. First, I want to apologize for my father's choice of words in his email exchange. But mostly I'm here to ask you to ask your friends, Mr. Wiggin and Mr. Notch, to please leave my parents alone. I have persuaded my father not to attend these meetings any longer and not to engage or get involved in any of these email exchanges. But I cannot stop your friends from driving back and forth in front of my parents' house, and I fear that it has driven my father to the edge. So please, please ask your friends to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jennifer Mathias.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Mathias. I live at 7950 County Road 26, and I'm totally new to. Oh, sorry. I'm totally new to this whole process, and I thank you for the facts that you presented tonight. I've been looking very hard to find more information on this. I heard a lot of the parts of the story throughout neighborhood get-togethers and things, and I was really concerned. I have a well, and I didn't want to be taxed for this very expensive sounding process. I'm trying to understand why we needed such a big thing, and it would be really great if you guys could get that information into the Laker. I've searched through city water reports of Mound, Watertown, Victoria. They all look similar to what Minnetrista has. So I'm not seeing why we need the RO system. Maybe that's been changed. I don't know. It's not in the Laker. What I do find in the Laker raised a lot of questions. So I guess the information you put was great, but we need more. And I don't think the flyer that was handed out at Trista Days, from everything I saw on it, that's what I found in the Laker too. If that's not true information, we need to get that information out to the citizens, because there's a lot of us that are concerned about it. And I don't think attacking the person that's handing out the flyer and threatening with going to their employer about it is the way to handle it either. So I would hope that you guys will get the information to us, because a lot of us are concerned. I don't want my taxes going up because of something that we don't really need. You know, you guys were elected running on conservatism, and I expect that that should continue. So, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Mayor Hunt, I was at Trista Day, and I was sharing information with neighbors and friends about my concerns with the water system. And most of what I wrote in a flyer, in fact, I think all of it, is substantiated in the May 10th and May 17th Lakers. I am concerned that we've gone from a $4 to $5 million project to a project that starts at over $21 million. I understand your description that the $4 to $5 million was a phase one, but this is the first time we've heard this, and obviously you've been having conversations about this not in this body. That's very concerning. I don't think anyone has seen that before. And the other thing I mentioned in my flyer was that the newspaper is asking some very serious questions about open meeting violations. That concerns me. I have a right as a resident of this city to be concerned about that. They have questions that they've raised about your relationship with Wiggin Water and their relationship with Bolton and Mink. Those are valid concerns. Frankly, Mayor, this is not a personal attack on you, but that's very suspicious. People have a right to be suspicious of this. There are emails and more emails, and I've got a few in my hand. I'm going to spare you some of these because I've read some in the past that were very disturbing. But clearly, you've had a lot of conversation with these businesses outside of this chamber. And as your city attorney explained 2 meetings ago, that is not appropriate. It's not a personal attack on you, but that is not appropriate. This chamber is for open meetings, and this is where they should be discussed. Lastly, you mentioned that you believe you didn't unilaterally authorize a $10,000 engineering study. Well, you didn't unilaterally approve to pay for it. You are correct. That was a unanimous decision, and that decision allowed the city to pay Bolton and Mink for a study that you asked them to conduct without this body discussing it in public. That is not appropriate. In fact, your city attorney describes it like this: the action to solicit this proposal prior to discussion and authorization by the full city council was contrary to council policy and best practices. That is your city attorney's opinion about your action, Mayor Hunt. And so I, as a citizen and a resident of the city, certainly have a right to be disturbed by that and suspicious of it. Lastly, I shared my concerns with people at Trist today. I paid my $15, I had my table, I shared information. You came up to me, grabbed one of these flyers, called me a liar, and told me you were going to go to my place of employment and tell them that I'm a liar.
That's not what I
I'm
said.
a resident of this city, Mayor Hunt. I have a right to speak like any other resident of this city without being attacked and without being threatened at my place of work. At the end of the last council meeting, you were on the telephone with somebody telling them my name and where I worked. I'd like to know who that was. Was it Mr. Notch and Mr. Wiggin driving back and forth in front of my house? Who was that? And why do they need to know where I work? I'm here as a resident of this city. I've told you that over and over and over, but you seem to be obsessed with where I work. I'm not going to stand for those kind of attacks. Mrs. Donahue, you told me at Trist today that what I was doing was illegal. Now, I assume either that's some form of intimidation, or maybe you could explain specifically what law is it that I was breaking. Then obviously the answer's clear.
This is a forum for comments.
Yes, and before
Not
you
to ask
left,
questions.
Mrs. Donahue, you said to me, quote, "You'll get yours." The bullying from this council doesn't go away because you put up bullet points on a slide and try to apologize, okay? I accept your apology as to your treatment of Steve Gale, but your treatment of staff and your treatment of residents is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Samuelson.
Good evening. My name is Jim Samuelson. I live at 1105 Sunnyfield Road since 2001. And thank you for giving me a few minutes to share. I have some concerns about the communication around the operation of our city council. The source of my input has been entirely through the local newspaper, and it seems that they are very, very confused, and I'm very concerned that this is the first time of any of the capital projects that we cannot explain in a simple, straightforward manner what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, how much and what the next steps are going to be. I have spent 30 years in corporate working on capital projects this size and larger, and when we can't explain in a very simple and straightforward manner to somebody like a newspaper reporter what's going on and what's to be expected, usually there's something else that's going on that can't be talked about. I hope that that's not happening. It was good to see that the clarification and the things that were going on earlier about that we're going to get an opportunity to have the citizens of this town talk and share their concerns and get more information, because that's really what I'm very much looking forward is that opportunity to find out why we contacted extra companies, why we thought that the original proposals were not good enough, why we think the inclusion of an RO system at in excess of $5.7 million is a good idea for even to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Wiggin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd ask for some additional time tonight because for the previous 2 meetings, David Kolb and Russell Fisher have attacked me at length for about a total of 40 minutes. Now, these two individuals knew that my wife had passed away of 49 years, 3 days before they had decided to attack her. So tonight is my night of revenge, and we're going to establish some credibility tonight. I have some flyers here, which I had hoped to put up on the screen for everyone to see, but evidently I can't use the screen. So, Mr. Beatty, maybe you being the attorney, I will have you verify the statements that I make, if they appear in these emails or not. I'll give them to you as I talk about. Is that fair with everybody? Being that people can't see them? Okay, in response to their attacks, well, I can't display, I had that written down here on the screen. The April 21st meeting, Mr. Kolb stated from my March 7th email, which I have here, and he read that night of the meeting from the email, he made the following statement, that I said in this email to urinate on the mayor. That was followed by Mr. Fisher in his email of May 8th that stated, I said, drag her and piss on her. Okay? Here's the two emails, one from Mr. Fisher and one from me. And I would ask, do you, Mr. Attorney, see anywhere in this statement, my email, that it says piss or urinate on the mayor?
Madam Mayor, I don't want to get involved in reading emails and verifying anything.
Who can I give?
Mr. Wiggin can pass out whatever he wants, but don't involve staff in this.
Don't involve who?
The staff in this. I'm not here to verify your
I
emails.
just wanted to use your, I can't do that. So they're here for whoever wants to see them. No such comments appear on these emails. Anybody that wants to look at them can come look at them. Obviously, then, that would indicate that both Mr. Fisher and Mr. Kolb are liars. I want to establish that, liars, because I have other facts to show that they are liars. On May 5th meeting, council meeting, Mr. Kolb stated that I do not support the police department. That's on the YouTube videos. Both of these statements are that they had made earlier. So, here, Mr. Kolb, if you're still here, is the hang tag which was used during the police building construction that simply states on here, it was handed out on every door in Minnetrista, the door hanger, and it states, it was pink and white, many of you may remember it. It says, we appreciate and support Minnetrista's police and city workers. Can't be much clearer than that, Mr. Kolb, if you're still here. Why are you lying, Mr. Kolb? On the May 8th email of Mr. Fisher's, he states on there that I have been driving by his home. I hope he has photos of that. I know he doesn't, because I haven't been driving by his home. And then he states, he goes on to state, that I will get a 3-pound hammer thrown through my windshield. I haven't been by Mr. Fisher's home since there was a fire in his neighborhood years ago, and I wasn't driving. So, Mr. Fisher, you are lying. Show me the proof, Mr. Fisher. Cut out all of your attacks. And, in addition, I have filed a police report with the city of Minnetrista for his threat on my life of throwing a 3-pound hammer through the windshield. I spoke with Mr. Falls at the recent Trista Days, and he said that that report is in the hands of the city police attorney. Is that correct, Mr. Falls?
That is correct.
Yes, okay. On April 30th, email from Russ Fisher, also here. Anybody wants to see it? He states that my son Jeff is a very admirable, he's very impressed with him, he's not surprised, and your son is a good man. That's Mr. Fisher's email to me. That's about the only thing that I will agree with you on, Mr. Fisher. My son is a good man. That was in response to my son's company, Wigan Water Technology, donation to Ridgeview Hospital Foundation for over $25,000. They are the largest sponsor for their charity golf outing and have been for several years. Interestingly enough, my son doesn't even play golf. But then again, going back to the May 8th email that I have here, Mr. Fisher writes, to my son Jeff, I still like you, but I am going to drag you, your company, and Bolton and Mink through some pretty smelly grounds. That comment defies logic. All the good things that he said about him, and then he makes a statement like that. Unbelievable.
You know, he's defending himself. Mr. Kolb had 12 minutes the last meeting and 12 minutes the meeting before. I'm going to let him defend himself.
I'm just about done. Mr. Kolb and Mr. Fisher obviously are liars with no class, dignity, and character. To learn more about Mr. Kolb, just Google Dave Kolb, Chief of Police Champlain, and see what their residents have to say about him. He is a liar, and he never lets facts get in his way. Things haven't changed much for you, have they, Mr. Kolb? Council, by their actions, it appears Mr. Kolb and Mr. Fisher are afraid of something. Should they be? Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gale?
For me?
Oh, Mr. Gale is next.
Hi, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Steve Gale. My name has come up a lot in the past. I thought I'd put a face to that name for some of you. I really appreciate your apology and your sincerity in finding facts from falsehoods on that email. Excuse me. But I have a few more important things that I'd rather discuss. One, I'm just going to read this. One is transparency. In the spring issue of the Minnetrista Messenger, the council stated that they are united in transparent decision-making and management. However, in the May 17th Laker, Mayor Hunt said that she would not comment about any issues regarding Minnetrista. Paper said all council members were called for comment, and no one returned the Lakers' calls. I don't know if that's transparent or not. I want my mayor and my council to be excited about talking about their city. I love this city. I've only been here 9 years, but I talk about it every chance I get. I want you to do the same thing. Be open, be transparent, do what you say you're going to do. I don't want you to become politicians. The second thing is the work environment. The Minnetrista Council fired City Administrator Mike Funk. The council said that Funk performed below expectations in areas of organization, long-range planning, and in relations with the acting mayor and city council. I guess we can all fire anybody, an at-will employee, for any reason we want. But in relationships, I'm not sure that's one of the most important things. I fear that the mayor and the council have now made it clear to the city staff that if they don't, quote, get along, they may have the same fate. I personally have worked with the staff for over 6 years. They are the best. They are honest. They are dedicated. They have integrity. And most importantly, they are transparent. I respect and I trust their decisions for anything for city projects, including water treatment. Getting to water treatment briefly, the council stated that the city water users should vote on which water treatment plan they want. Mr. Christens, you've said that numerous times. I really appreciate that, and I agree with that. But I want to make sure that the original city staff projections, the people that I really trust and admire, that is also placed on the ballot. A cost-effective gravity system with a phased increase in output as the city population grows has to be an option that we, the residents, can vote on. No one can accurately predict future development, as I heard earlier. I live in Hunter's Crest. I've lived there for 9 years. Hunter's Crest is 12 years old. We're not built out yet. There's no future plan for it to be. It's just piecemeal as it goes on. I don't know what's going to happen, but if we don't build out, this rate increase that you've got a minimum of 7% could be 2 or 3 times that. We need to know all the facts. Please be transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison?
Madam Mayor, Council, Ralph Harrison, 4935 Grandview Avenue. Been a resident about 14 years, and I have no hammers with me tonight. I'm just going to say, first of all, I want to give you credit where credit is due. If it's due, I'm not sure. I'm referring to the Red Oak Golf Course, where there has been a request by the developer to, from what I understand, take out 2 lots in return for an accommodation on the architectural standards. We in the community view that as a positive thing. However, it is something that we requested at the original meeting and was denied. So I give you credit for that. If that's the case, we'll see if that happens further on in the meeting. I also want to remind you, though, that the bigger issue here for us is what we consider to be a lack of vision and wisdom regarding the fact that you could have lessened the blow to this entire neighborhood and to the city, and particularly the area residents of Red Oak, if you had lessened the impact of the density, which you had the option to do, but instead you took $180,000 and allowed an 11% increase in the total number of units, or 12% increase in the total number of density units in this entire area. And you could have gotten around that, and you would not have been in jeopardy of the Met Council minimum standard. I look at the paper here, Metro paper, February 23rd, 2014, because we want to speak in facts, and I don't mean to attack anybody personally. There's a quote here by Lisa Barajas, I believe it's pronounced, Manager of Local Planning Assistance for the Met Council. Said cities have flexibility to plan inside the line of pockets of higher or lower density to meet neighborhood needs. Mayor Hunt, you're also quoted in here saying, it's a myth that local cities really have that much control over density issues. Well, I think you're probably right on that in large part. I don't disagree. I understand you guys are under the gun. And what is not a myth, though, is the fact that you took $180,000 in lieu that the developer, in lieu of 2.3 acres that the developer was required to give to you. That acreage and the 7 approximate units that are represented in that acreage would have lessened the entire blow to the community. We all have agreed upon, and you've acknowledged yourself, that the density is inappropriate in this area for Red Oak. So why didn't you do something about it when you had the chance? I don't know. But a lot of us, and it goes against the city code, which was cited to you, which explicitly talks about PUDs, planned unit investment developments, and the priorities and the environmental impacts and what the expectations of development are for those PUDs. And you just disregarded it as if it didn't exist. We haven't forgotten that, and the voters aren't going to forget about it either. I guess a lot of us are kind of feeling that we would like to have been somewhere higher up on the preferred constituency list, because if we had been, maybe we would have a different outcome than we have today in that development. And I hope you consider that for future developments. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Larry Gillette?
I'm Larry Gillette, 6070 Sunnyfield Road, and I think I probably should have come to a different meeting because I have nothing to speak about in governance or water filtration. But what I wanted to talk about for just a minute was gravel roads. I've lived on Sunnyfield Road, which is the road with the high school, but on the gravel portion of it for the last 40 years. And during this time period, for about the first 38, we watched the quality of the road deteriorate with increased traffic and virtually no maintenance going on that road. Last year, for the first time really since I've been living there, we tried it, the city council, the city itself, and its road committee tried an experiment of trying a new surface material, which is, I think, a granite aggregate of some sort. And from my assessment of it, it's been a great success. It's a far better surface than anything we've been using in past years, and I would certainly encourage you, as money becomes available, to look at expanding that out to other gravel roads in the city, because it seems to hold up much, much better. The second thing he did was that last year, for the first time, you allowed for one dust abatement treatment for all roads. Prior to that, it was up to the individual property owner, as you know, to contact you or not to contact you, but to pay the city to have however many feet they wanted done, which resulted in a hodgepodge. One person did it, the next person didn't. One person on this side of the road wanted it, the person on the other side of the road didn't, and so it didn't work out very well. Having this one treatment over the entire road, so you don't have to grade in between the areas that are treated and whatever, again, in my assessment, has been a real improvement. And so I guess on both those, for the gravel surface and for the treatment, I would certainly like to encourage you to continue the experiment you've done. Some things work, some things don't, but if you don't try them, you'll never learn from it. So thank you.
Thank you. John Sandholm?
My name is John Sandholm, 8780 County Road 15. I guess I better start out by saying I did not have a discussion with Mr. Gale here before coming up. I received the Minnetrista messenger last week and was a bit surprised that you as city council members can continue to make the claim that we are all united with these objectives. And the second listed is transparent decision-making and management. Really? For a number of meetings now, we have heard of the many email exchanges between each of you that deal with city business that is only supposed to take place at the city council meetings. How is this being transparent? If you had been conducting business in an ethical, transparent way, there should have been only minimal email traffic between council members, and the city clerk wouldn't have spent or be spending hundreds of hours compiling these data requests. If you would have been transparent by conducting all city business at regular scheduled city meetings, there would not have been the need to request an investigation of possible violation of the open meeting law. Back in March, were you being transparent when you tried to suppress the Laker from publishing the proposed water rates of the 3 water treatment options that were reviewed at the March 17th council meeting? Were you being transparent when you exchanged emails beginning in February about your plans to fire Mr. Funk? Based on these few examples, I'd say you have failed miserably in your united effort to be transparent with your decision-making and management. So in this performance element, I'd say you have all performed below expectation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Paulson?
Good evening, my name's Mark Paulson, 4925 County Road 151. I'd like to read a couple paragraphs from the Minnetrista Messenger for those of you that may not have seen it. Many residents have expressed their frustration with housing density. In the past, our city ignored Met Council guidelines and therefore developments were approved that didn't have enough density. Minnetrista's long-term comprehensive plan was approved by a previous city council that was forced to negotiate with and yield to the Met Council. Minnetrista is suffering the repercussions from those decisions today. I would agree, we are suffering, and I realize that those decisions were made years ago, but I'd like to point out that I think the current council has the ability to help mitigate some of that suffering. In the Red Oak development, it's already been stated, I won't rehash it, there could have been lower density that could have been approved by this council. There could have been green space that could have been approved by this council. And I would like to reiterate Jody Youngquist's request, an act that the council act on, looking at giving some of the $218,000 that are being paid for the removal of trees to the residents that live adjacent to this development. The city administrator at the time said that's certainly within your purview, and I'd like to see some action on that so that we can have a buffer between this high density development in our property. If you look at this thing from the air, this 62 units or 61 units on 20 acres is surrounded by 5-acre lots. If you flew over this, you wouldn't know what happened here. So it's clearly out of character for the area, and I would encourage the council to act on giving some of that tree replanting money to the people's properties that abut that development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Craig Moody?
Mayor Hunt, city council members, city staff, thanks for the opportunity. I'm Craig Moody. I live at 1260 Morning View Drive. I'm the director of health and safety at the University of Minnesota, but I'm not making comments on behalf of the university. The Minnetrista city engineer and staff recommended an $8.6 million plan over the next 5 years to adequately filter the city's water. That plan had adequate capacity to accommodate the Woodland Cove development, which is the largest housing development that this city will have. The plan allowed for expansion for even more water users after that and could be expanded in the future if development exceeds expectations. Current users would pay the current costs and future users would pay the future costs. This was a sensible gravity filtration plan such as that is in use by 98% of Minnesota cities. Approximately 500 cities use gravity filtration to 10 cities using reverse osmosis. You rejected that plan in favor of a much more expensive set of options that run between $21 and $35 million. Those options do include reverse osmosis, which wastes 30% of the water processed through the system and is only used by those 10 municipalities. My department at the university does all the hydrogeologic and geotechnical surveys and assessments for every facility within the university system, including research and outreach centers and field stations. I've talked to other people in my field and have compared our results of sampling with people from staff from the state health department. My conclusion is that the $8.6 million plan is adequate and safe, and you've given the people of the city no compelling case for the reverse osmosis system other than fear and hysteria produced by one specific RO vendor who has a vested interest in selling RO technology. Please put the $8.6 million option back on the table and let the people decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Notch?
Hello, Tom Notch. I live at 1250 Morning View Drive. Lived here for 29 years. Just a couple corrections here. I've been hearing this $8.6 million plant, yet earlier I heard really the starting point for the plant from WSB would have been about $18 million. So I think we need to look at the correct numbers here. But just a few things here. I did notice too on your slide, you're looking at outside cities, kind of maybe more of a regional approach. I know Dave Osmick, you commented, was in favor of that. And I'd like to really encourage us to go in that direction. Mound has got similar water problems that we have. Spring Park has got similar problems. St. Bonnie has a gravity filtration plant, but they have a lot of problems there too with their water from talking to residents there. The more people we can get in, and the more regionalized this becomes, the more cost effective it is. So I applaud you for looking at that. As far as Bolton and Mink, they're the wonderful firm to have. They're the city engineer for Mound. They're the city engineer for Bonnie. They do a lot. They do more water plants than anybody in the state, and it's a good choice. But I just wanted to acknowledge that. As far as taxes going up, I heard that to pay for the water plant. I think everybody should be aware now that taxes aren't going to go up. This is all based on user fees, is what it is. And I also applaud all of you for having the residents that are on city water make the shots, call the shots here. That's great. And it sounds like after the 5:30 meeting now, we'll have some good numbers on that, and that's great. I don't throw any stones at any one of you for not talking to the Laker because I've seen personally how they goof up the facts. I was at the same meeting as the editor of the Laker, the one that was held out in Chaska or Carver, and she came back and she didn't report on the numbers at all that Bolton and Mink had presented. And again, they've got far more experience than our current engineer on water treatment plants, and we should be listening to them. And I also want to thank you all for keeping your promises. I was looking back through my files, the old pink flyers you guys had, Arlene and Ann in particular, and every single promise on that you've kept. And thank you so much, and God bless you for that. I also want to clarify one thing too. I did hear from Russ's daughter, and I know she's got great intentions, but I have never driven by, I know she's here, their house in the last 3 years. So I don't know what Russ is seeing. It's not me. I talked to Jerry. It's certainly not Jerry. So I don't know who's going by there, and I haven't gone by there. And even if I had, it's a public road. I shouldn't have to be threatened with a 3-pound maul. But again, I have not gone down that street. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to mention. And again, thank you for your hard work, and God bless you all.
Bob Basma? Is it Basmer?
Mayor, Council, never had a chance to meet you, but I'm here to, not to complain, but I live on West Hill Road. And the road did get bumpy here a while back, but the grader took care of it. But if you was to put that calcium chloride on, that was the answer for many months. Didn't have to grade it or anything. So if you could probably calcimine most of the roads, that would hold the road together and save on your grading and everything. So that's all I got to say. So
Thank you. Mark Sass?
My name is Mark Sass. I live in Chanhassen, but I've been following this council for 40 years. I have had land at 19 in North Arm for those 40 years and been paying taxes all those years, including beneficial sewer assessments. I watched, followed many, many different regimes of way things have been operating over the years. And I really didn't see a lot of these people involved in a lot of this stuff that are speaking. And I don't know, maybe I don't know them or where that is. But I do know that people do care and people work at it, but there's a lot of meetings where things weren't represented. There was a lot of not being able to speak at some different meetings over the years. Gravel roads had never been addressed, or there's a lot of issues over those over the years. Just a lot of things going on. One of the last things that really got my draw and was wondering why a lot of these people weren't here is why did we build a $5 to $10 million police station with 6,000 people and then promise that we're not going to pay any more taxes and leasing a bond to do it? In any case, I just think it just appears that there's a lot of sour grapes going on. And I think we need to all listen and get involved as a group. We can pick on each other until we're blue in the face, but let's just work with this current staff, the team that are here. I know every one of these people personally. I've worked with them a lot, some of them up to 20 plus years. All I want to say is they have a good heart. They really want to do this right, but all we're doing is picking on each other and challenging and fighting rather than getting involved. We can say that this $5, $10, $20 million water thing, we know what the answers are. We don't know what the answers are. There's a lot to be involved to get all this stuff put together. And all I want to say is, let's just listen and get involved. And when you don't know and understand, dig in and talk to people personally. We're all human beings. Let's make that work. I want to support you, right or wrong. None of us make right and total decisions and everything. But if we're really working hard at it, let's try. I think it'd be the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Harry Gregg?
Thank you for letting me speak. I was here a month ago at the last meeting, and we had issues with the berm around my property. I'm here tonight to report to you, and Mr. Christians was at the last meeting we had at my house. that Tom Walters from Mattamy and Chris Burke from Fregis, in a matter of 4 hours, solved the whole deal. I had to give them an easement for 90 days to get on my property, and a berm, of course, spilled over on 15 feet. But it's everything that I wanted, everything that was drawn out in 1996, and everything was just perfect. Chris did it in 4 hours. It was no problem. I know that for the last almost 18 years, Carlson had an opportunity to do this, and we all know where that got me. But yeah, they're good guys. They're honest. They said what they wanted to say, and they did what they said they were going to do. And right now, we're just sitting there waiting for the sky to quit spilling on us so that they can get trees in. And I want you to remember those two guys in the future, because there's going to be a boatload of trouble over there. Unforeseen problems with grading, water runoff. I was at Kings Point Road today with Gary Peters from Minnetrista. We got culverts that are plugged up, water that's not being held back because there's no crops in the fields anymore, and it's just bare dirt, so it's a mess. But anyway, those guys, Tom Walters from Mattamy and Chris Burke from Fregis, they're just absolutely honest guys that work hard, and they want to do the right thing. They didn't have to do this, as Councilman Vanderlinde and Christians had, and you, Madam Mayor, had spoken to previously, but they did. They're good people, and they can be worked with, and they're honest, and that's I guess what means the most to me during this whole deal. And I would just like to thank you all as a group for being fiscally responsible for us in Minnetrista. A lot of backbiting, a lot of fighting, a lot of he said, she said tonight, and I don't even want to hear that anymore. Nobody out here on that side, on this side of that bench, knows what goes on behind closed doors other than you folks. So I won't take up any more of your time, and just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Wildman. So- You don't want to speak? Okay. She's not here, or she doesn't want to speak? Okay, Patrice Conover, is that correct? Or Patricia Conover? Passing, okay. Mr. Hilk, Arnold Hilk?
Yes, I'm Arnold Hilk. I live 1 mile up east of here on 110, and I grew up 3 miles west of here on 110. And that's 71 years I've been in this city. Can anybody beat that one?
Oh, there's one.
I'm usually, I've been here longer than you have.
You're a good neighbor. I hope I was as good a neighbor to you as you are to me.
Your hearing is getting bad and your eyesight's getting bad too, ain't it? But I'm usually proud to be a Minnetrista resident. And now and then I'm very disappointed. And right now, I'm really disappointed and embarrassed to admit that I live in this city. I have never seen or heard such childish behavior as I've heard recently. Most of you people here, some of you up here ought to be ashamed, and you should be embarrassed, and you should go sit out in the back corner. All the backstabbing, the backbiting, it's ridiculous. Grow up. I remember when Minnetrista was a township, going to meetings out at the gun club out there because they rented a corner of that building. And that building sat on 6 tree stumps. We didn't need a big fancy building like this to make decisions. They got it done. You know, grow up, people. If you got a problem with somebody, approach them. Tell the truth.
Don't believe everything you read in the newspaper. You can't do that anymore. Don't believe everything you see on the news. Because reporters used to be negative. Now they sway the public. The other thing is I don't care what kind of water system you put in this city because I don't get your water. I got my own. But I will highly recommend a reverse osmosis system. I've had one for about 10 years, and it's expensive. But I'm saving all sorts of money, and the fact that my appliances that use water have outlasted their normal lifespan. I have not had to replace a faucet in my house since I put that system in. So in the long run, it's going to save you money. Now, the only service I get out of this city is the police service, and I cannot complain about them. They've done a very good job for me. A couple of times I've been upset with them, and I talked to them. But I also went down and told them what a good job they did, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
He knows me.
Thank you.
But it's, you know, I pay the same rate of taxes even though the police are the only service I get from the city. You know, and I have a lot of friends in other communities, and this city has become a laughing stock of the western suburbs, mainly because of these ridiculous copper roofs we have on these buildings, and that building over there that's sitting half empty and half finished. I'm still waiting for the day that I can vote to have that built, because somebody used it as part of their, whatever you want to call it, the lies they tell before they're elected. So I'm still waiting for that one. You know, we have a friend that's looking for property. We brought up Minnetrista. She said, no way, I'm not going to pay those taxes. We said, what do you mean, those taxes? Well, to see your city buildings, you've got to be paying extremely high taxes. That's the reputation we've got because of the show we're trying to put on here. But then you get a quarter mile down the road and there's a junkyard right up to the street. So here we impress people, go down the road and it looks like a junkyard. Why isn't the city doing something about that? There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot about it. Oh. I will say that I am very happy to see that the present council is looking at other options and not voting yes for everything the mayor brings up and says has to be. At least they're looking at other options. They're looking out for me, for you, for everybody that lives in this city. They're looking at other options, other costs. And I really have concerns about one company that seems to be getting most of the city contracts. Now this one, they want to give them for this water treatment plant. They're not even in the water treatment business. Now that brings up a lot of questions in my mind. But being we're in a mixed crowd here, I will not go into that. And everybody have a good evening and thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think it's Donald. Is it Donald? Donald, at 9114 Woodland Drive. I can't read the last name. Donald? Like Kilburn? Donald, this one.
Sorry.
Yeah.
K-E-H-K-E-L.
Caring, maybe? Donald Caring, maybe? Something like that? Okay. Nobody's. Mark Hammond? Is it Hammond? Hamold? No? Honold?
I think you left, and I was right. Can I speak real quick?
Sure.
I'm Lynn Honnold, 3801 Eagle Nest Drive. I live in the Turtle Creek development, and I would just like to make note that we do not get the Laker. And so none of our residents, we have 100 homes, do not know, and I also think that might be the same for Hunter's Crest. So none of this information has gotten out to us. So I would appreciate if you could do it in the Waconia Patriot or do something, but the lake, and we have talked to them many years, and they will not deliver to our neighborhood. Hunter's Crest, if somebody can clarify that with Hunter's Crest, I'm not sure if Hunter's Crest gets the Laker either.
I don't think so.
So you've got 500 homes that do not get this information, just to make note. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jane Norling.
First, I want to make a correction of the comments that I made when I was here at the last meeting. When I reviewed the tape afterwards, I was kind of appalled to hear myself say that the city of Greenfield had to pay out $4,000 in damages excuse me, for employee litigation. That was $400,000. I would like very much to thank your city attorney, Ron Beatty, for it was a thoughtful response to my 6 items that I wanted, that I asked you to investigate. It was thoughtful, it was well-written, it was complete, it was accurate, and it totally fulfilled your duties on this as representing your client, the governing body. I do notice that you continue to be ethical and did not say that my charges are unfounded. I would like to point out when you get to that part on the agenda that he does suggest that if there should be an investigation done, it would not be by himself. He would recommend an independent third party, specifically suggest League of Minnesota Cities. I'm not supposed to ask questions right now, but do understand that the citizens are going to be monitoring what action is taken on that. It all kind of relates to, do you really understand what the issues are that I brought up? And if you really believe you are complying with them. One in particular, the conflict of interest. I would like to share with you something. It's not just fighting about what type of water treatment plant we should have. It was the lack of due process, which Mr. Beatty points out in his letter that's already been read tonight, that was not followed. And it just continues through the whole project. And disseminating the information, as the last lady said. But it came across the responses to that RFP that you referred to earlier, request for proposals. This one was sent in by Charles Vine, who is the president of Advanced Engineering and Environmental Services. The company is commonly known as AE2S. This company refused to submit a proposal for our RFP, and he has some very valid reasons why he chose not to, but he brings up at the end, I think, something that really speaks for a lot of us, in that you have stated that you want an independent evaluation done. However, I don't see how this is being accomplished with the invitation to the engineer that was involved in the value engineering study now being invited to also propose on the study. And we know that there's a close association between the two firms that would likely be then doing the design and the build out. The other area is that where I think this was demonstrated so well is that it's come up now twice that the council voted 100% to approve that study. And I think I can speak for state Mayor Fisher's comments accurately for everyone here, that study was, you were voting at a special session at noon, and the study was going to basically be presented at 7. Mayor Fisher felt that she was once again forced to choose between what is lawful and ethical and what she felt she had to do to protect Minnetrista from further embarrassment. And that was, she felt that a significant portion of the money had already been spent, that at this point we had a bill, and that she did not want to refuse to pay that. That is the impression in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to our 2013 financial audit presentation by Clifton, Larson, Allen. What?
I think they're about to enter in.
Okay.
They were out in the lobby. Mayor, I'm going to ask Mr. Grimm to introduce our friends from Clifton, Larson, Allen, who performed the audience. So if you guys want to come up. And Brian, if you want to go ahead and begin.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, Dennis Hugavine, who is a principal with Clifton, Larson, Allen, and Michelle Hoffman are here, as she's a manager there, to present the results of our 2013 audit. And I'll maybe going to just touch on briefly, it's right here, just a couple high points before they get into their presentation. You can see it's a 100-page report that's in your packet, so they'll be summarizing more of a 15, 16 slide PowerPoint. So, but one of the things I wanted to point out is we did have another really good year financially for the city of Minnetrista for 2013. Our general fund did have a surplus, even though we had budgeted to use reserves, and that was through a combination of some revenues, some coming in the building permits, and some delinquent taxes coming in better than expected, as well as some department managers doing a good job of staying within their budgets in the general fund. I think a reference to the public safety, that was the biggest component of our expenditures, coming in better than budget to actual in the general fund. We did have an open position for most of the year, so that attributed to a lot of it, but otherwise I'll turn it over to Mr. Hugavine and Ms. Hoffman to go through the PowerPoint here. So I'll just pull that back up and let them away they go. So.
All right. Thanks for having us. Apologize for not being able to hear out in the entryway there, so we didn't hear that was our turn to come up here, but glad to be here. I am a resident of Minnetrista, so I see some familiar faces in the group here. So in my professional life, though, I work as a partner or principal at Clifton, Larson, Allen. So for many years, my practice in my professional life has been auditing of municipalities and school districts and charter schools, things like that. So when the city did an RFP for audit services, we participated in that process, and we're very glad to be chosen for this year's audit. So tonight we are reviewing draft reports. We met last week with Mike and Brian and made the decision at that point. At that point, when we met last week, we didn't have all the final pieces, like for example, an attorney letter. We were waiting on that. That came that same day that we actually met, but by then we'd already made the decision. Since fairly new council, new auditors, we thought the best approach, we do it about half and half each way. Sometimes we come and issue final audited, issued reports with no input from you. We decided for this particular year, and we could certainly discuss in the future, we decided to come with drafts so that they're still in draft form. You see a draft watermark, so you have the ability to have input into the final issued reports, and we'd be prepared to do that this week and get those sent off to the state auditor's office for you if you'd like. We do want to thank all the hard work that Brian Grimm and the finance team put into the audit. As we were communicating as part of our debriefing on the end of the audit, we wanted them to know that from our perspective, in terms of that transition from one audit firm to another, sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't go well. We would classify this for our purposes, strictly in the audit sense, that it went very well. We very much appreciate all the hard work that they put into that transition, because it can be painful. It's a lot of work to re-educate CPAs as far as how things work and where to go to get information and things like that. But they were very responsive and very accommodating, so we appreciate that very much. So tonight we just want to go briefly through some things, the actual required reports that we're required to issue as part of the audit. So we've got a formal letter called the Required Communications report the audited financial statements, or the CAFR. The city has historically prepared a comprehensive annual financial report that you submit to the GFOA Certificate of Excellence program. You did get the award for 2012. It really is a commendable thing for the city, though, because it really is saying that you're holding yourself to a higher standard of accountability in terms of the amount of effort that you're putting into financial reporting. So the CAFR is much bigger than it would otherwise be required to have. It's got a lot of great statistical data in there, a transmittal letter, and things like that. We fully anticipate that your 2013 financial statements will continue to qualify for the GFOA award. And certainly we have addressed the minor comments that came from the 2012 submission, and we'll make sure that those get addressed going into the 2013 submission. And we just want to do some high-level overview of the finances for the 2013, and then close out with some other items. So as far as the required communications, there's a separate letter that was part of your board packet that kind of outlines these things, but just to do the high-level overview of that, in terms of the required communications that we're required to have with you as governance. The audit provides only reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. Obviously, if we were going to provide absolute assurance on your audit, we would have to test every single transaction. It would not be practical or cost effective, of course, so it's based on random samples and things like that. We tend to zero in on where the risks are based on each individual city, and then custom design an audit approach based on your unique situation. So for 2013, there were no new GASB standards that had to be implemented, so that was good. The letter also outlines the key areas where accounting estimates are required to put together a CAFR. The examples we gave were useful lives of capital assets. You can't possibly know how many years a particular asset's going to last, so you have to use estimates. The valuation of investments is an estimate, and then the valuation of your OPEB, or post-employment benefits. And as I said, we already received the full cooperation of management. If we had any disagreements with management or any difficulties in performing our audit, all of those are now required elements that auditors are required to communicate to a city council. So we're pleased to report that there were no such things to include in this year's letter as it related to the audit. We do intend to issue an unmodified or a clean opinion on the school's financial statements. City, what did I say, the schools? I do a lot of school district audits, so I always sometimes intermix those, so I apologize for that. In the city's financial statements, we are also required to issue a report on your internal controls. The only thing that has changed in that regard is that now when we propose material audit adjustments to adjust things, which is historically a very traditional part of the audit process, we're now required to tell you that in that letter. So we did point out a couple of areas where we did some proposing of audit adjustments to fix things. I think it was, as we discussed them at the end of the audit as part of the debrief, is very common things related to construction and just cut off issues in terms of some revenue recognition and some invoices that had some work that had been done up to December 31st, wasn't billed until January, I believe. So the other report that we issue as part of the audit is a legal compliance opinion. The Office of the State Auditor puts together a thick checklist of state statutes that we're required to test your compliance with. We had no exceptions to note for 2013 on your legal compliance letter. So I'm going to ask Michelle Hoffman. She is the audit manager on the audit, so she had more of the day-to-day responsibility. I think at our peak here, and we did the audit work here in the council chambers, I think we had 6 different people. It wasn't for the whole time frame, but we were keeping the finance staff pretty busy with questions and things like that and challenging them for information. So she was responsible for that day-to-day interaction. So I'm going to ask her to go through some of the financial aspects of the audit, and then we'll stand for any questions that you might have for us.
Okay, and as Dennis mentioned, we're just going to go pretty high level here. You have a very detailed various reports in front of you that I know you received. This particular graph just shows the general fund. And we have the unreserved or unassigned fund balance shown here in the bars that you can see. And there was just a terminology change in 2011, which is why we have both terms there. And the line that you can see going across the top is the percentage of that fund balance, what percent that is of the annual expenditures. So as you can see, 2013, it ended just above 60%, which is very good. And the city's fund balance policy aims to keep that amount above 50%. I think just one time here it dipped to 49, but overall the city's done a really great job of keeping that above that 50% and not letting that decrease. And as you can see, overall fund balance pretty consistent over the last 5 years.
That would be very typical of 1231 or the municipal government in Minnesota because of the timing of when you get those tax collections coming in. You basically have to cash flow yourself up until the May remittance of tax receipts and things like that. So it's very common to have that size of fund balance.
All right, again, we're just looking at the general fund, and this just shows the makeup of your revenues over the last 5 years. As you can see, it really accentuates how much the general fund and the general operations of the city rely on tax revenue to come in. That is that huge, the dark blue there that makes up 75% of your revenue is based on taxes. And the second line there, I believe, as I flip my page, is licenses and permits, which makes up about 10% of that revenue. Again, just really shows that, to provide those basic services really is just relying on that tax revenue as that main source of revenue in the general fund.
I think as Brian indicated, a significant increase in that for 2013 was the development of some, building permits and things like that, that activity started up again, so a significant increase in revenue there. But the other point I think that's important to indicate is a lot of the inner ring suburbs have a lot of intergovernmental aid and things like that they draw upon. You're not a city that taps into those kind of resources, so that for that reason, you are more reliant on local taxes for funding of the general fund.
Here again, we just have the general fund, and this shows the breakdown of the general fund expenditures. And here, the largest area, which is that the third one to the right there, is the public safety, which makes up about 50% of that. And then we have the general government coming on the left there with 25% of it, and public works being the third biggest item there, making up most of the expenditures. You see the other two categories, recreation and parks and other, make up very small percentages of the general fund expenditures. But overall, if you look at the last 5 years, those percentages are quite consistent from year to year, from category to category. Just shows, the city and the council kind of keeping an eye on those expenditures and doing a good job budgeting and keeping them really where they're budgeted to go.
Oh, Michelle, or just one comment.
Yep.
That 50% for public safety, that's pretty common in other cities that you audit. I mean, that's what I've seen over the, comparisons.
Oh yeah, yep, that's definitely usually the largest expenditure often, so it's very common to have that be that high. All right, so now we're looking at the general fund again. Now we, kind of went over some of these numbers already, so this is just, you can see the revenues and expenditures and fund balance all kind of compared into one table. So I won't really spend too much time on this, but it's just another way to see kind of compare the numbers there. So moving on to the other governmental funds, now we're excluding general fund from these tables, and this is showing, your capital projects, your debt service, your special revenue fund. So those are all included here. And this again is just the fund balance. And the reason that we only have 3 years shown here is that starting in 2011, due to a GASB standard, there was some new terminology that was used, and had we included the 2008 and 2010, it kind of wouldn't really be comparing apples to apples. So we started with these 3 years, and obviously, next year we'll just add another year until we get 5 again. But that's the reason you only see 3 years here. And as you can see, the two largest categories there are restricted and assigned. Restricted is being that piece that is restricted by an outside source. You don't have control over it really. It's restricted by bond issuance or something like that. You can't spend it how you choose. And that committed piece, which is very small there, would be amounts that council would potentially take action on to set aside. But the larger portion there of assigned is balances that the city has set aside and said that we're planning on using them for these reasons, but it doesn't have to be used for those reasons. It can be decided differently in the following year, but just kind of designations on things we intend to use the fund balance on. So those are the two largest categories, that restricted and that assigned. And overall, as you can see, a slight increase in fund balance over the last few years. The biggest increase here in 2013 from 2012 was due to some unspent bond proceeds that came in for those projects, a couple big road projects that haven't been completed yet. So the funds some of the cash is still sitting there. The funds that were brought in for those. So that kind of spiked the fund balance a little bit in 2013, and it'll probably go down again as those funds are spent when those projects are finished in 2014. All right. And here, moving on to our enterprise funds. This would be your water, sewer, stormwater, and recycling funds. And this graph again shows our net position for each of those 4 funds. Each fund is represented by one of the lines here, water being at the top, sewer, stormwater, and recycling as you go down. And this is what we call the unrestricted portion of basically the bottom line. There's also a portion that's the investment in capital assets, but as the name states, that is what you've really invested in your infrastructure, capital assets. It's not really available, obviously, to spend again or to use. So we kind of remove that piece to show, well, this is what is left. This is what is potentially spendable or that you have available. Not that it's highly liquid necessarily, but it is not in capital asset form. So overall, as you can see, just kind of a slow, steady increase each year, very consistent, which is very good to see. No crazy ups and downs or spikes. So again, shows some good management of fees and expenses. One decrease in the water fund in 2013 just related to a little increase in utilities expense, but otherwise pretty consistent overall. And then we have a few graphs here showing breaking down those funds with the water fund here just by itself. And each year, the two bars you see here is the operating revenue and the operating expenses for each of those years. And then the lines that go across the graph show the operating income. The one on the bottom that you can see that dips down, that's operating income as it is shown on the financial statements. The one that's a little bit higher is operating income with the depreciation expense removed. Depreciation expense, while it is very real expense in operating income, it's not a cash output. It's not something you can really control. So it's kind of helpful also to see the rest of the operating revenue expenditures, kind of the operating income without that, to see what are our actual fees less expenses directly related to those, and see where that falls without that depreciation. So again, a little bit of a dip from 2012-13, mostly due to that increase in that utilities expense, but otherwise it's been very consistent over the last 5 years. And here we have the sewer fund. We have the same graph in the sewer fund. So operating revenues and expenses, again, showed side by side in the bars. And then you have your operating income, or in this case, the slight loss when you add in the depreciation on the bottom. And then once we take that depreciation out, you can see that the operating income is now positive and definitely jumps back up. But overall, pretty, very slight increase in revenues and expenditures each year, very consistent. And finally, we have the stormwater fund. So again, same graph showing our operating income. And as you can see, when you have the depreciation in there, it does cause an operating loss. But as you take it out, shows somewhat of an operating income. And there was a little bit of increase in expenditures in 2012 and 13, related to some increase in usage, but pretty consistent then from 2012 to 13.
Next graph is simply looking at your future debt service. A lot of times city councils like to just have a heads up as far as what's already been determined, as far as your debt service before any projects, like, for example, what you're discussing tonight. So that's just the only point of that is this is what's actually scheduled to be paid over these future years that are included on this graph. So.
The one comment I'd want to make, just to clarify, and the council knows, is that the reason it's going up in 15 and 6. Oh, were you just going to say it?
Oh no, that's fine. Go ahead.
Is the Kings Point Road and the roundabout projects are coming on, and most of that's being paid back through assessments to those suspected properties.
No,
So. Okay.
No, I was just going to make sure to clarify that this is as of 12/31, so obviously, and those are the scheduled payments, but any new debt that is even planned is not included in here. So anything that might be still issued, or even if it was issued, in which had in early 2014, anything there would not be included. So.
Next graph is just one that we, again, this is our first year auditing the city, so we met last week to kind of make some judgments about what, as a council, you would find helpful in your job as council members and the mayor. So the next slide is just simply looking at tax rate comparison, and we have some cities that really like that, and other ones that aren't as interested in it. But basically, what this graph was telling us is that for 2013 property tax rates, Minnetrista was below the majority of those comparable rates that we've listed on here for statewide average, for the region, the metro cities, and things like that. And I think, most people wouldn't be surprised that Orono and Medina were the two that had lower tax rates given their tax structure and situation in those two cities. So anyway, that's the point of that graph, so hopefully you find that helpful. The next slide is giving you a heads up on a new GASB standard that's coming down the line in 2015. All public employees belong to one of the pension plans. So for a city, it's typically PERA, and we have various components of that. If it was for the school district, we'd have the added component of TRA, for example. But in 2015, all governmental entities have to recognize your proportionate share of the unfunded liability for those pension plans. So that's new under governmental accounting. So under the GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board gets to decide what constitutes governmental GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles. So 2015, basically all cities are going to have to recognize your proportionate share of that. So the way that's going to work is PERA is going to have an audit of their books. They're going to come up with an allocation methodology
to determine what your share of that unfunded liability is. And then it'll be like year-old data, so then when we do the next year's audit, it'll be based on the prior year. Just from a practical standpoint of having information to use for your audit, it'll have to be something that was basically about a year old. But bond, houses, bond rating agencies, lenders, everybody's aware of the situation. It will be adding a new level of liability onto your statement of net position, not your fund level financial statements. We really want to emphasize it's not going to change your fund balance of your general fund or any of your governmental funds. It's at that entity-wide perspective. And again, all governments are sort of basically in the same boat, and it'll be taken into account in terms of all these other agencies that pay attention to such things like that. So we don't even have a good estimate of what your additional liability might be. I just haven't seen any numbers estimating what that might be. So. And like, as you point out here, you did receive the GFOA Certificate of Excellence for Financial Reporting for 2012. Those were the things that we wanted to review with you, but we would be glad to answer any questions that you might have for us based on any of the deliverables that we've got in draft form at this point.
Any questions?
You're very thorough, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Did you have a question on the para thing?
Well, I think he talked about it a little bit as far as I think we had talked earlier today as far as the GASB 68 relating to PARA and how the state and I think when we even talked, I think the state of Minnesota is probably in better shape than a lot of other plans that have the Public Employee Retirement Association type plans. But this is there will be a liability that will be added, I guess, in 2 audits out, I guess, or for 2015, that'll just basically be we'll have whatever 0.00 some percent. Obviously, Minneapolis will have a lot bigger percentage than Minnetrista as far as what it gets attributed to our audit. But it's more of a global, I guess, type change versus anything really that's affecting our day-to-day operations. Or I don't know if that's.
I think I'm glad you pointed out, because one of the things that we find frustrating is that it's not a liability that you had any say in. Everything else that's currently on your financial statements is something you as the city have decided. This particular liability is something you have no control over. It's something inflicted, based on these public employee plans. So that's what the key difference is, that you didn't have any say in it. Yeah. But it will be reflected as a liability on your statement of net position.
It might be something PARA will have to look at as far as when they set their rates, as far as what the mandated contributions are, as far as the police and coordinated funds, but obviously, nothing that we would have a direct say in. So.
This is the very, very hot topic right now, the National GFOA Conference. It's like 6,500 people from all over the country are in Minneapolis for 3 days, starting Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning.
Right now.
So it's the hot topic this year. How is this going to work, and how are we going to get the information that we need? How are we going to consider it audited and things like that? So we'll continue to work to get on top of all that and give you information as we have information to give you.
That's where I'll be tomorrow. So yeah.
So
yeah, I guess I don't know if council has any other questions. Otherwise, I guess probably the only 2 remaining items. I did want to thank personally the finance staff of Angie Bowl and Don Muchko. I didn't do that earlier, so it was Don's first year too, so she got to learn about city government and audit. So that was an eye opener a little bit, but she got through it. So, and then I guess we just probably look for a motion to accept the audit as presented, and then we in turn would incorporate the final couple of changes and submit that off to all the different reporting agencies. So.
I'll make a motion to accept the audit.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we on the tape. Okay, so let's move on to the consent agenda. And I wanted to amend the regular minutes for April 21st, 2014. At the very end, there should be a summary after we came out of closed session, just saying that we were continuing the performance appraisal to the next meeting. That was the only change that I was going to suggest. Do you have any other changes? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's 4-0. Okay, and now public hearing on vacating the D&U easement in Palmer Pointe. Is that you, David?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is a housekeeping item.
from your consent agenda, item 4E, which is a lot line adjustment for the properties at 4640 and 4648 Palmer Pointe Road. They are doing a slight property line adjustment. As part of that, what this is holding the official public hearing, which vacates that drainage and utility easement. I will note that as part of this lot line adjustment, we will be getting a new drainage and utility easement over the new lot line location. So again, just a housekeeping item to that item. So looking to open the public hearing, receive comment, and then take action on that item.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody want to make a comment? Applicants here? No? Can I close the public hearing? Close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions? Make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the vacancy of the drainage easement. I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 4-0. Okay, next is our liquor license renewals.
That's going to be our city clerk, Terry Harsted.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, both the Westonka Recreational Association and the Burl Oaks Golf Club have applied for renewal of their liquor licenses. So if it so pleases the council, I'd like to address them one at a time and then have a universal motion for both. So the Westonka Recreational Association is currently licensed to sell 3-2 beer with incidental sales of pop, candy, and bagged snacks. Sale hours are during adult baseball hours, tournaments, and special events. Sales are not permitted of alcohol during youth-only games. The applicant has submitted all required materials, including the required fee, proof of insurance, and proof of alcohol compliance training for the on-site supervisor. The Minnetrista Public Safety Department has conducted, and the applicant has passed all legally required background and compliance checks. And as in the past, staff would recommend approval of the on-sale 3-2 liquor license renewal with the following conditions. No alcoholic beverages should be permitted on the property except those that are sold by the Westonka Recreational Association. No alcoholic beverages may leave the premises. All required postings and laws must be followed. All staff and volunteers serving or selling liquor must receive training regarding the selling and serving of liquor. No alcohol may be served during youth-only games. The on-site ability to call 911 must be provided. A weather alert radio must be installed and operated when the public is present. The liquor license is non-transferable, and all other conditions set forth by Minnetrista City Code and state statutes should be followed. In addition, the applicant must maintain the required levels of insurance coverage for the duration of the licensing period, and delinquent taxes, assessments, utility charges, things like that can result in the suspension or revocation of the liquor license. Thank you.
Thank you. Council?
I make a motion to approve the renewal liquor license for the Westonka Recreational Association ballpark.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that was my fault. I'll open the public hearing on the Westonka Recreational Association ballpark liquor license. Anybody want to speak? Okay. I'll close the session. Now we'll go to
Okay, and then in
Burl
regard to the Burl Oaks Golf Club, the applicant is currently licensed to sell intoxicating liquor, wine, and beer. Sale hours are during golf hours, tournaments, and special events, as well as during the operating hours of the Oak Grill. They are also applying for renewal of their Sunday liquor license to permit them to continue to serve alcohol on Sundays as approved by Minnetrista voters. In 1992, and their conditions would be exactly the same as the WRA park. I believe you have it in your report, and I read it for the WRA, so it would be the same conditions.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing regarding the Burl Oaks Golf Course liquor license. Anybody want to speak? I'll close the open, and now do we want to make a motion for both?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the renewal liquor license for the Westonka Recreational Association ballpark and also Burl Oaks Golf Course.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 4-0. Okay, now we're going to move on to business items, and the first one is the waiver of the architectural guidelines for the plat of Red Oak for Sourceland Company.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'll just give a brief introduction and really turn it over to the applicant, Pat Hiller from Source Land Company. You may recall at your May 5th meeting, there was a waiver request from Ryland Homes for certain architectural guidelines for the preliminary plat, which was approved back in February for the plat of Red Oak. Source Land, the applicant of that preliminary plat, has made a subsequent application, and really I'd like to just turn it over to Pat Hiller from Source Land to give his presentation to City Council this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Hiller?
Madam Mayor, council members, thanks for having us back. I want to talk about this briefly here. Tonight, we'd like to ask the council to reconsider this waiver for the architectural guidelines, two in particular guidelines for the Red Oak project. And last week, or last council meeting, when it was presented, I don't think we didn't give adequate background as to the necessity and why we're making the request. And so tonight, we'd like to provide a little more background and justification for why we feel this request is essential for the success of the project. And so just a little background information. So I don't know if we need to go over that. The plat was approved in February, and Source Land Capital has reached an agreement with Ryland Homes to be the builder and the developer of the site. And so just again to review briefly, the basis for the Red Oak development was a minimum 3.0 density to the acre. It was out of our control. We were operating within the parameters set forth. And so we produced a plan at 3.1 units per acre, or 61 lots. We found a way to get a couple of extra lots in there. The minimum required number of lots would have been 59. And the idea with the development all along was to do primarily two-story single-family homes, 3-car garages, very, very marketable product that will sell, and that is the intent of the project from the beginning. There was never really any consideration of single-family homes with 2-car garages or even townhomes. When we submitted the application for the preliminary plat, we included in there, and I'll show pictures on the next slide, 3 sample plans just to give the council some idea of what they could expect the development to look like and what the homes would look like in the first plan. And so the two architectural the two issues that come with the 3.0 development are primarily the garage proportion, and just for the benefit of everyone here, the current limit in the statutes or in the ordinance is 55% of the front of the house cannot be garage. Anything more than that is not allowed as it's written, and the garage protrusion in front of the front porch is limited at 8 feet. And so the waivers we're asking for are specific to that. And the plans that Ryland is planning to utilize, and again I'll show pictures here, there's a variety of them in terms of the garage protrusions and the garage proportions. And the whole intent is to provide a variety of plans for the site so the site looks interesting architecturally, and so that we're not seeing a cookie cutter 1 or 2 or 3 plans. And that was made very clear to us during the public meetings that we want an interesting looking development. These are the 3 sample plans that we showed as part of the preliminary plat. It was in the council's packet. The first plan on the left is kind of a plan with the garage relatively flush with the front porch. And then the other 2, you see different level of garage protrusions. The whole point here is to create different options for the builder to design plans to create the variety. But in all of these, you're seeing 3-car garages, and by virtue of the fact that the lots are generally 65 feet wide in this development, the front proportions end up being, the garage proportions just end up being more than 55%. These are the plans here, 4 of the plans Ryland is considering building in there. They're very, very similar in terms of the look and feel. 3-car garages, you've got some plans with the garages protruding forward a little bit, some where they're flush. Again, we're trying to create some variety here so that the development is interesting architecturally. One other point I'll make here is, well, I'll go to the Palmer Pointe here first, and then I'll make my other point. I think at the last council meeting, maybe a question was brought up about why, if it worked at Palmer Pointe, why can't it work here? And so let me describe the difference. If you look at the smaller lots in Palmer Pointe, there's some very large lots down at the water that we'll ignore for the moment, but the smaller lots up on the hill average 0.28 acres each. And the Red Oak average lot size is 0.23 acres. Well, that small difference of about 2,178 square feet on a 65-foot wide lot gets you an extra 34 feet of depth. And so in Palmer Pointe, they're able to turn the garages, which creates a much deeper floor plan. And so with the turn garage, the waiver is not necessary. And so that type of product is not possible in Red Oak because our lots are pretty shallow relative to Palmer Pointe. And so that's really not an option. So the plans we've shown you really is all that can be done in the development. And so what we're asking for tonight for the council to reconsider is due to the fact that these were the plans that Ryland is showing and will plan to build are very consistent and almost exactly the same as what we showed in the preliminary plat application. The waiver is just as essential as the variances we requested and were granted by the council in terms of setbacks and whatnot. What ends up happening is, I don't know that when the ordinances were written in terms of the architectural guidelines that a 3.0 density was contemplated. As you get into the tighter and tighter lots and that type of requirement, these waivers are just necessary in order to get the houses to fit on those types of lots. It's just one of the fallouts of the size of the lots. In order to, if it is helpful for the council to support our waiver, we would be willing to go down to, we didn't want to do this initially, we would be willing to go down to the minimum number of 59 lots on our final plat application. Talking with David Abel here, that is felt to be a minor enough change that we wouldn't need to go through the process again. We can just draw that in on the final plat application that we'll be bringing to council here in the next several weeks. And what that would look like is the larger circled area here is where we would just take out, we've taken out one lot in that area on both sides of the street. And then what you end up with is, in that area, the previous lot widths averaged about 72 feet, and then they're now at about 83 feet. So you're adding about an average of 11 feet of width to those lots in that area, and the rest of the lots are going to remain unchanged relative to the preliminary plat that's been approved. This other area to the left, the small area, I wanted to just point out by the way, speaking with the local residents to the west, they asked if we could flip-flop the road stub and the lot that was there, so that all that is a flip-flop of what was there previously to better align with the neighbor's driveway immediately on the other side of that road stub, rather than have the road come right in through and shine the car lights into his front window. Flip-flopping at one is preferred by the neighbors there, and we said we'd do that for him. It doesn't affect things in any way, so that'll be the other minor change that, with the council's approval, we would bring in our final plat application. So I guess that's all I got here. In summary, the waiver is absolutely necessary, we feel, for the success of the project. All we can do is get down to 59 lots. That's the best we can do, and we are willing to do that. And so I would ask the council respectfully to reconsider our request and in light of the necessity.
Council, any questions?
No.
Okay.
Comment. Appreciate that Source Land is willing to do this. I mean, it lessens the impact on the neighbors. It's as low as we can go, and I think, council, at least, council appreciates it, and hopefully the neighbors do too. So, otherwise I'd make a motion to allow Source Land Capital to approve a waiver for architectural request for the Red Oak plot.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 4-0. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next item is the Hoffman Stormwater request. I believe that's Paul, right?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Mayor, and members of the council. In your packet is a memorandum regarding the Hoffman drainage issue that was brought to you at the work session on May 5th. We did talk to the watershed district and come up with a collaborative plan to look at long-term fix. We also did visit the site with the watershed district and take a look at maybe some short-term fixes. I understand from Andy Moffett from our office that it looks like we will be able to excavate the channel as a temporary fix. We do need to, however, wait for the area to dry out. That's going to be key for that, to get some equipment in there. And what we did is we did prepare 2 resolutions. One is a resolution authorizing the preparation of drainage study for the Hoffman area drainage issue. And we also have a resolution that would recommend adopting, or that would approve the WSB and Associates scope of services to perform the drainage study. That study proposal is also included in your packet. That is proposed on an hourly rate basis and a not to exceed fee of $11,700. It's based on a cooperative effort with the watershed district.
So are they going to help pay for it?
We will work with them to target grants in the solution. So when we look at the long-term solution, we'll look at guiding that to meet their grant criteria so that we can get some funding to help with that project.
But they won't help fund the initial study?
That's not clear at this point. I would assume on the safe side that they would not, but we'll ask them if they can help us in that effort as well.
And this would come out of our stormwater fund?
I can just add, Madam Mayor, members of council, with the previous example on Minneapolis Avenue that we did a joint project with, it was the study was upfront cost that the city had to bear, and then when the grant funding was approved, half of that was then covered by the watershed district. So as Paul mentioned, that similar approach would be sought out for this situation.
And I'm assuming the long-term fix is going to be a whole lot more expensive than this beginning of it.
And these funds would come out of the surface water, stormwater fund,
Right.
to your initial question.
Yep.
Any other questions, Council?
Make a motion to recommend adopting resolution authorizing the preparation of a drainage study for the Hoffman area drainage issue.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 4-0.
And we've got another part of that, right? Make a motion for staff, further recommendation adopting a resolution approving WSB and Associates Incorporated scope of service to perform the drainage study for outlined.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we're on to approving plans and specs authorizing advertisement of bids for the Lyle Park tennis courts.
That is also in engineering, and thank you. In your packet is the plans that we have prepared for the proposed improvements for the tennis court, and there's also a parking lot in there. We are requesting that council consider approving plans and specifications and authorizing advertisement for bids for the Lyle Park tennis court improvement project.
I just had a couple questions on one of the prints here. Is this the parking lot, or is this the tennis court that's got about 3 feet of select granular under it?
The tennis court has 3 feet of select granular, and that's was prepared in that fashion with the recommendation of the geotechnical consultant, and that is to reduce the heaving,
Okay.
to keep the moisture out of the subgrade.
So that's pretty standard?
Yes, in this type of a soil condition, yes.
Because I mean, that's standard for a 9-ton road.
Well, and then one of the things with the tennis courts, and I've seen this in other communities, where even when you get a little bit of a movement in the soil, you end up getting a bump or a crack or something like that in the surface, and it does, from a player standpoint, obviously affect what the ball does. So when they look at the heavier section, that helps reduce that significantly. If you'd like us to go through and look at value engineering and reduce part of that, we can look at doing that as well.
Well, I mean, we want to do it right. We don't want to have to redo this thing in 3-4 years.
I don't think that would be the case, but it's longevity of the product and how if you want it to be there for a long time and to
Right.
utilize this over a number of years or decades, I think this is the approach you'd want to take.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, council? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the plans and specification authorizing the advertisement for bids for the
I'll s-
Lyle Park Tennis Court Improvement Project.
I'll
City
second it.
project Number
Yep.
3-14.
I will second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. Okay, D is designation of Michael Barone as interim city administrator and discussion regarding a permanent replacement for the city administrator position. Are you handling this, Mr. Barone?
A little weird, but yeah, I think I'll take a shot. Did have a chance to meet with Mayor Hunt and Councilmember Vanderlinde the week of May 5th and talk with them. They were just trying to gauge my interest in trying to assume the duties of the city administrator position. And then scheduled a meeting. I had a number of items to consult with the Personnel Committee about, and met with them the following week on Monday, with this item being one of the items that were on our list for discussion. I asked for a 10% increase in my salary for the duration of the time that I'm the interim city administrator, and no other change in my benefits, so, and they agreed to that. And then my recommendation to them for permanently replacing, if you want to use the word permanent, replacing the city administrator's position, whether it's me or anybody else that would sit in this chair, was to postpone that process until after the election. The election takes place in November. At that time, you'll know who your new city council members will be effective January 1 of 2015. There's likely up to 3 people that are sitting here tonight that will not be on that council the next time around. And so in fairness to not only the community, the other city staff, and any candidate that would want to work here, I think it would be best just to throw me into the position with the interim tag. I'll do my best to justify that, and we'll leave it up to the next council to seek and authorize to try to find a replacement on a permanent basis for that position. So that was kind of the nature of my inquiry with them, and then my discussion with the Personnel Committee. So I'll be looking for a motion in that regard.
Did you have any questions, anybody?
No.
I make a motion to appoint Mike Barone as interim administrator with a 10% pay increase.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's 4-0. And then, do you agree with the idea of waiting until after the election and letting the next council pick the next
Yeah.
city administrator?
Definitely.
Yes.
Everybody,
Absolutely.
okay.
I
So
think
I'll
it's-
entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to wait until after the November election, or after the first of the year, excuse me, to put in place a permanent administrator.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, number E is resolution amending 2014 appointments and designations.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is in regards to, there was one item on the council
Oh,
earlier that still
I
remained
have
unfilled.
to call a recess, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm
Can we
sorry.
take this up after that?
That's good.
Okay, I'm going to call a
5.
5-minute recess.
Thank you. No problem. I know, I didn't see the.
Council meeting. Next item that Mr. Barone had started was the amending 2014 appointments and designations.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The item on the agenda to amend the appointments and designations is in regards to, well, we do this annually, not to interrupt myself, but we do this annually. But with the departure of Mr. Funk, there's a couple of spots where his name appeared, and I believe it would probably be in your best interest, since you've appointed me interim city administrator, to jump into those spots. They would be the Westonka Community and Commerce, along with Mr. Christians, the Personnel Committee, and then also on the Police Communications Committee with yourself and Chief Falls. We also had on the agenda tonight, but we had nobody step forward to be a representative for the LMCD. So that still may come back at a future meeting, but at least this particular item, there's a resolution in your packet, so I guess I would call for a motion to put my name into the 3 items I just mentioned for our designations.
Okay, I'll make a motion to do that.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're to number F, which is discussing the appointment for a new council member to fill my vacant seat. Council? What are you thinking?
Well, I think we have 2 very good applicants, and I thank both of them for applying. At this point, I guess I would like to make a motion to appoint Gary Pettis as the new council person.
In looking just basically over all of the experience and amount of time in the city, I'm gonna second that.
See, and I kind of like Tyler Abens because he's on city water, and that would provide a different viewpoint, and he's a different demographic, which I think might be nice to have on our council, to have a young family person who has a slightly different viewpoint on things. So I guess,
So this is a tough one, because they're both.
they're very
I mean,
both.
this is a tough
yeah.
one, because they're both, one has a long time experience of living here, and of course, the other one is fresh blood, and I do agree with you, Ann, a new look, so it's kind of a tough one. I feel like we're on American Idol.
Well, we may have a problem here,
Okay.
and I'm not really sure what we're gonna do about it, because
Well, I think you have a motion and a second in front of you, so you certainly should, if there's, if mayor's discretion, if there's any other discussion that you want to have on it, then you'll have to vote yes or no on that particular motion, then you can,
Yeah.
fails or not, I guess that'll determine your next course of action.
Yeah, this is a tough one, it's. What, so.
this is the problem we're trying to get out of.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well,
Having
it's
it-
kind of ironic, actually.
I know,
yes,
It
but
I
is.
know. And like I say, I think both candidates would be good.
Absolutely.
I was leaning towards Mr. Avens, not for any, any particular reason. It was, like you say, the water issue, that's an interesting one. I think a little bit of the financial background, and Mr. Petters has a good, solid background too. So, I don't know, I guess we go from here, right? And take a vote.
That's right.
Okay, all those in favor?
So the motion on the table is to vote for Mr. Pettis as the next, as the 5th council member.
So, we end up.
We take the vote, and then we go from
We go.
there, okay?
Mhm.
Yeah. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Oh,
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Oh. Opposed? Aye.
So what did you vote by?
I did,
You did? Okay, so it's 2-2.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Attorney, but I believe that motion did not pass.
It did not pass, and so an alternate motion would be in order if someone wants to make one.
I'll make a motion to appoint Tyler Abens to the city council for the remainder of my term.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
All right.
Aye.
Oops.
What happened?
Is that 2-2?
2-2. That failed.
Yes, it did.
Motion failed. Okay. So
Well, Madam Mayor, this is one of the, in this instance, this is one of the very few cases in which a mayor has the right, in the case of a tie vote, to make an appointment.
Really?
I think I will take that responsibility, and I will appoint Tyler Avens, our new city councilor. And I do thank Mr. Pettis for applying, and I hope he'll run again in the fall.
So with that, Mayor and Council, I think what, as I mentioned during the workshop, but for the benefit of the audience here tonight, I think instead of having Mr. Avens run up and sit in chair number 5, I think we'll swear him in at the next regularly scheduled council meeting, which would be at 7 p.m. on Monday, June 2nd. And you're obviously, we'll be in contact with you between now and then. But we give you that opportunity to have your family and friends here if you want to so do so, to have them here at your swearing in. And we'll also be in contact with you so we can set up some orientations and things of that nature and some training. So.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is discussing the scenic byway. And I pulled this off the consent agenda because while we had voted to support the scenic byway in the past, they're now asking to see if we would support a feasibility study. Who is covering this?
Well, I don't know who was covering this. I think it was kind of a group effort, but I think Brian actually put together the memo. I think he drew the short straw on this one, so.
Yeah. Let's see here. I gotta pull that up.
We're frantically going through our packets trying to
Yep,
find
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it was back on the consent agenda. It was like the third.
Oh,
See?
no wonder we can't find it.
No, it's what,
Yeah, I think
4C?
correct. Yeah, it's on page 129 of the packet, and yeah, I had my staff pull together some information as far as the way I understand it is that the city of Wayzata is taking a a pretty strong lead on this project. So
Right.
we obtained, I guess, the a template resolution as far as from them as far as the the participating communities, and I think they were looking for some responses by June 1st if possible, is what they had indicated as far as that. So otherwise and I don't know exactly how much this would commit us to. I guess I was under the impression it was more of a letter of support.
Well, we already sent them a letter of support.
Okay.
We did that already. Here, I'll just tell you what my concern is with this. If we support a feasibility study, whether or not we directly pay for it, we would be included in probably a joint application to explore this idea. So even though we're not directly, we're going in as part of an application, it looks like to me. And I'm not sure what benefit the scenic byway has for us, so that's what I'd like to discuss. There hasn't been an established route. I mean, there's been assumptions that it'll go down County Road 44. Do we want additional traffic on County Road 44? Do we want signs? What would we be calling attention to in a scenic byway? When it goes through Minnetrista, you don't see the water except when you're going across the bridge or down by where the Jones live. You don't really. So I guess that's. Do we want to commit to this? I mean, it's not that I don't want to support Wayzata, but I don't think we should commit ourselves to going in on a possible application for funding to do this.
I'm not clear of the benefit of the city, for the city.
Well, that's what I'm
confused
asking.
about. Yeah, I don't see what benefit it would have for Minnetrista. I mean, unless I'm not seeing something. But I don't
Well,
see
that's
any
my
benefit.
question. Do you think that there is a benefit? Do you think that,
Where are they gonna be looking for the funding?
well, they'll call it a regional application.
To who, though?
The state, probably.
Here, let me,
Yeah.
Madam Mayor and Council, let me read the second whereas in the resolution. I mean, because the way I understood it, and the way the resolution reads is, the designation of a state scenic byway route imposes no financial or legal requirements on the participating jurisdictions except the individual marketing and branding efforts determined by each jurisdiction. And it references in that no new billboards, I guess, are allowed along the route, so.
Right, but what I'm saying is, they're not committing us, but they're using the conglomeration of cities to go and ask for money from the state. And I don't want to go down that road because I don't think that it has a direct benefit for Minnetrista. I mean, and maybe you feel differently, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't see one either. I don't see a benefit, direct
Well,
benefit.
the only benefit I can see is working with our neighbor
Right.
cities.
Of Wayzata.
Well, Wayzata, I mean, it's going through which cities? Mound, looks like Minnetonka,
For a second.
Minnetonka Beach, Woodland, Deep Haven, Tonka Bay, Minnetrista, Excelsior, Mound, Greenwood, Victoria, Spring Park, Minnetonka, Shorewood, Wayzata, and Orono. I mean, it will probably benefit them more than us, but I'm okay with that.
Okay.
We're working with.
That's why we're
with our-
discussing it.
Yeah, we're working with our cities, you know, we're trying to get some goodwill going with everybody, and, yeah, it'd be a good thing for them.
Do we know in terms of the other cities who has approved it at this point?
That's a very good question, Mayor and Council. Before Brian maybe jumps back in, I want to echo kind of what Mr. Van der Linde has mentioned. I think this would be a really good way for us, since we're one of these lake communities, to partner with our neighbors. As long as, and I think initially I was a little skeptical of this, but as long as we're financially or legally not required to expend any city funds on this at this point in time, and I don't think this obligates us to do so. I think it might be worth maintaining that partnership. I would hate to be the one or two cities that maybe is not participating in this. I think it might give us a bit of a black eye. So I think at this point in time, my recommendation to you would be to kind of pursue this, see where it goes. We're not financially obligated for anything at this point in time, and if we are, it's going to be our call anyway. So
Can we do this? I mean, I feel it's very important for Minnetrista, especially to work with the city of Mound. And if Mound has gone ahead and approved this, I mean, I would hate to go ahead and say, okay, Minnetrista's doing it, but Mound's not, or some of the other cities that we want to work with are not. I mean, I agree with Mark. I think it's a good thing to do, to work, to build relationships with the other
I
cities.
can certainly find out where people are at.
And so if we could find out where they're at or what their thoughts are, I'd be all for it.
But then we'll miss the deadline.
Yeah, that's the only thing I was just going to touch on, yes, Mayor, was they were looking for a June 1, since this is our last meeting in May, so.
Right, and there may come a time that the shoe's on the other foot.
Right.
We may be looking for support from them.
Correct.
So, like you say, as long as we're not financially obligated,
Then go
Mhm.
forward.
you know,
Yeah.
Okay.
then I'm okay with it.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
Where's the
Okay.
resolution? We got, anyway, well, I'll make a motion to support, authorization of a feasibility study for the Lake Minnetonka Scenic Byway concept.
Okay, I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. Okay. Next are council reports, and I have nothing for this meeting. Mark?
Madam Mayor,
Did I miss something?
I think we skipped over the
Oh,
approving the
approving
claims.
claims.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes, yes.
Any questions on the claims?
I have
No.
none.
I
Make a
don't.
motion to accept the claims as printed.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now council reports. I have nothing. Mark?
We had a Pioneer Sarah Creek meeting the other night, and we're working on the third generation, and we are gonna be meeting with the head of Bowser, because he's a little concerned that, the Pioneer Sarah Creek has not accomplished a lot of their goals that they put forth in the last, how many years. So we will know a little bit more next week, I think the meeting is gonna be, so it's something that we have to think about. I did touch base today with, our administrator, Mike Baroni, and, they're looking for some history of our past projects and our future projects that have to do with stormwater. So to try and make a presentation to Bowser, to show them what we've done actually. Some of it's not been reported, so that's gonna be coming up. So I guess after the next meeting, we'll kind of know where we're at. I don't know if they're,
What's been done in the Pioneer Sarah Creek or in the whole city?
well, they're getting input from all the cities.
Okay.
Right.
But I mean, they only
But-
want to know what we've done within the Pioneer Sarah Creek. right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and Bowser's ultimately one that has to approve the third
Right.
generation plan. And we're a little concerned because of the letter that was sent, so I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks what's gonna happen.
Good. Arlene?
I have nothing.
Bob?
My only comment is pertaining to the Westonka Community Commerce regarding Spirit of the Lakes. The Spirit of the Lakes Committee is obviously looking for not only sponsors, but also for volunteers. So anybody here that would like to volunteer, it would be greatly appreciated. And then also from a sponsorship standpoint, are participating, as I know they've been to some extent in the past. We should, I'd like to find out what our thoughts are in terms of participating with the Spirit of the Lakes. So, I know last year, I think all what took place was the
Oh.
former mayor was in the parade. I don't know what extent, was there any financial commitment to it at all? Do you know, Brian?
Gosh, not that I'm aware of.
If we could check out what our involvement as a city was last year, it would be appreciated. I know we need to finalize the sponsorship and volunteer soon. It's right around the corner. So that's all I have.
Okay, staff reports, Hennepin County Assessment Services Agreement renewal.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, I'll take that one. And I have a letter which I have somewhere in my pile here, but I know basically what I'm looking for is we got a letter from Jim Atchison at the we use the Hennepin County assessor for our assessing services. We have for several years, and we have a 3-year contract that's expiring in July, and they had sent a letter to the city saying it was basically time to look at a new contract. So I just wanted to at least get the blessing of council, or the feedback from council to go ahead and to tell Hennepin County and Mr. Atchison, we'd be interested in another 3-year contract for assessing services. I think they've done a good job. I know several years ago we transitioned to the open book process, from the board review, and I think that's worked really well, in my opinion. I think from the residents, it's a longer period and more informal where they're able to work with. Mr. Kevin Wynn is our main contact. I think probably at least some people know that, or I know you guys all do. So we just wanted, before I just made a call and said, send a contract, or what the dollars and terms would be. We wanted to see if that's the route that we wanted to continue to do for our assessing services.
I did have a question about that. Were they looking at housing out of our offices?
Yeah, I think
I'd heard something to that effect
I think
from somebody.
Mr. Wynn, I think he had some discussions with Mr. Funk. I don't know where you and
I don't know about that, so I guess I'm
Well,
gonna have to get up to
See
speed
if we
on
can
that.
work that into
Yeah.
the
Sure.
negotiation.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I had heard just a little bit about that, but yeah, maybe there's something we can work out there. But is it the consensus of the council to look into that?
Yep.
Or again?
Do we need to take a vote?
I think it was.
I think, probably not at this point, probably obviously if we have a
Okay.
contract for you to vote
Just
on.
more
so
as long as there's consensus to pursue.
Yeah.
Pursue it.
pursue
Yeah,
that.
Absolutely.
definitely. Yep.
Okay, next is Mr. Baroni, Mr. Beatty for the resident request for attorney investigation.
Madam Mayor, Council, I don't have an oral report tonight. I considered the memo that's in the packet to be my report. I think all of you read it. I know a number of other people tonight have mentioned it, so it's been made available. If you haven't seen it, it's public information. If the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I think the memo speaks for itself, and I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
No,
None.
thank you.
Thank you. Upcoming meeting topics? Who's handling that?
I believe that's the person that sits in this chair is supposed to. I don't really have anything to share with you on upcoming meeting topics. I I actually do have a couple of informational items to share with you that
Okay.
aren't listed here. I don't know if we wanted to do 4 first. Just remind folks of the next
Sure.
meeting, which is June 2. We have a special meeting at 5:30. I don't know if we have a topic designated for that. It's going to, I assume, more water quality, water treatment stuff, so for the special meeting and the regular meeting. A couple of informational items I think I'll share with you at this time then, Mayor and Council. In your informational packet, there was a brochure, flyer, whatever you want to call it, from
The LMCD?
nope, the Met Council Environmental Sciences, and they're having a municipal customer forum. There's 2 separate sessions being held, one this Thursday at 9 a.m. at Golden Valley City Hall, and the other the following Thursday, May 29th, at 1:30 p.m. at the League of Minnesota Cities offices. And their topics are, you'll hear some comments from the general manager, water supply issues, their preliminary 2015 budget and rates, and then Thrive MSP 2040, and any questions you may have. So I'm not sure. And I was trying to talk with, trying to determine if this was geared towards staff or geared towards city council members, and talk with Mr. Abel, and he's seen a few of these come across his desk in years, and generally they tell you what it's for, if it's for council or for elected officials, or if it's for staff, and this one really doesn't, so it's your call if you want to attend or not. So if you do want to attend, I think they would prefer that you give them a call and RSVP. So I don't know if one or many of you want to go. If you do, obviously just it's in your informational items, and then you can certainly give them a call if you're interested in attending one of those sessions. And then the second item I have has to do with the technology for this room. Been working with EPA Audiovisual, and we scheduled the week of June 9th through the 13th as the installation date for the AV equipment, which would be cameras and repositioning the sound system that's over there on the wall to the back room where everything's going, and installing all the other items. So it should take roughly a week. It's the week in between our 2 council meetings. So for the June 2nd meeting, we'll still be using using the standalone camera over there, and probably, I say probably, we'll be using that for the June 16th meeting, since the installation will be done on Friday, and then we have a meeting Monday. I'm not sure if anybody's here's going to know how to operate everything. There's training that's going to take place afterwards for Isaac and a number of staff members to kind of familiarize ourselves with the equipment and how to operate it, and et cetera. So I'm not sure if we'll be quite ready to use it a day later, essentially, 1 business day later. So July looks like a good bet for being able to use the new equipment for the first time. That doesn't mean we're going to be broadcasting live at that point. I still have some things I need to do with MediaCom to make that happen, but at least we'll have our equipment
Did
here.
they put in the fiber optic yet?
No, they have not. No, that's one piece, and then the other is the box, I guess, that connects the equipment we have to their station. So we're getting there, getting close. So at least it's done snowing and the ground's thawed. So,
Right.
and those are all the items I had. I don't know if any members of the staff have any additional items for the council. If not, I think.
I should probably just add one thing. The LMCD has declared a high water emergency, and so it is no wake on much of the lake. And just to give you a heads up on that, the water level has been over 930 for the past 8 days. So
And with today's rain, probably rising. So.
higher than that now. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.